Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, one half a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us.
Hell yeah.
They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second.
Here we are on a second part of the, religion hour, God, whatever you want to call it. And this part is more of a how practically do I justify following God in a world of, hey, God doesn't exist, blah, blah, blah. I noticed one thing, when people are denouncing God, usually it's almost like a popularity thing. It's like, it reminds me of being in high school when people are around saying, oh, what, you don't drink? Yeah, I drink. I had a couple wine coolers last weekend. Yeah, and that's sometimes the genesis of it. And then they all fall into the same arguments, typically of, oh yeah, it's Santa Claus. It's a great story. And again, and you could say the same thing about religious people believing in God. Do you believe in God? Oh yeah, I believe in God, even though they don't. So don't ever be swayed by, oh, this group of people is saying this one thing. Oh, I must not know. I mean, gosh, if we can get rid of that, peer pressure, so to speak, our lives in this world would be so much better. And just be more factual. I mean, sometimes, yeah, you kind of go with the flow, just conversationally for certain things, but when it's such an important belief, you don't want to sway your belief just because of the popular vote. So here, some people start with, okay, is there a God? We'll start at the very beginning, and it's if you're walking on a different planet and you stumble across a sprocket, and let's say man has never been here before, so you thought, but as soon as you see that sprocket, you're like, oh, there's design here, so there must be a designer. I got a little problem with my radio. I don't know why it's playing music. So anyway, so we get to the point where we're walking, we see a sprocket, and let's say we keep on walking, then we saw a watch or a radio, and at a certain point we all have to agree that there is a designer. There was a designer here. And why do we say that? Well, because obviously this is not random. The stuff that we're looking at. I mean, sure, a rock is random, but this, that, and the other is random. But this watch, no, there's no way it could be random. It has to be there's a designer here. Well, the problem with that is one of the most complex things in the world is not a watch. It's not a radio or a sprocket. It's probably the DNA helix and how it works in our bodies. You cut yourself and you will heal yourself. When a woman conceives, she will give birth to some. I mean, we can go on and on how sight works. We don't even understand a lot of it. And to say that, okay, that is by chance, even though it's the odds of it happening are so much more greater where it's impossible. And you're like, oh, well, given enough time, you can do anything. Well, the problem is, no. If I say, here's my phone number, let's say you take an old-fashioned phone and you dial my number. If that number is off by one digit, you could dial me forever and my phone will never ring. It's not gonna change by the number of times you dial, and in that you have what has to happen for life. even not even talking about the body, just for our atmosphere. It's not just the temperature or the gravitational pull. We're talking about radiation and all these things. I think somebody said there's probably like 1 million knobs, and everything has to be tuned just right. And then, you have this thing that happens, but the problem is, you've heard of spontaneous generation, in that a lot of our organisms could not survive if they were any less of an organism. In other words, they're, and I'm not a scientist, this is just conversational observances. And, there are things in our body that if they just exist, they're pretty complex. You take away one thing and it doesn't exist. So it has to be spontaneous. In other words, let's say you have something that is a creature that walks on land, and if it has to evolve into a fish, or vice versa, a fish evolves into whatever, it's like at a certain point in its evolution, it's just going to be prey. As it's evolving its defenses, and it would be extinct. But like some of your cells have little motorboats, and they're going around. And of course, I'm getting the terms mixed up again. I'm not a scientist, but the point is they're advanced enough to where they could not evolve into that, because anything, if it's like a motor, if it doesn't have a part, the motor doesn't work. And it just with your body and the organisms, if it doesn't have an organ, it doesn't work. It's not like your body will start to work. And the perfect example is software. If you take all the binary code in the that's in software, it can't evolve to what it is. It has to be done, and then it works. If it's minus anything, it will crash or have problems. And that's how our bodies are, and how the world is it has to be in its final state. Sure, we could change within our species and whatever we are, but we can't change from one species to the next. We can't evolve from nothing to something. So, the fact that, when God says He spoke the world into existence, the Cambridge effect, we see all of a sudden life just is there. It's not the evolutionary process to where we evolved from one thing to a fish to an ape to here we are. And I'm not saying it's a young earth. I'm saying I don't know how God did it, but I know what He did do in certain cases, and it was spontaneous. And some people blame it on the Big Bang, but it's funny how God says that's exactly how it happened, the Big Bang. In my opinion, it's He spoke it into His existence. But there's plenty of evidence as far as the science goes. I mean, you could, if you're thirsty for it, there's so many books out there and so much information. But if you can go into it with an open mind and read both sides of the story or listen to debates, you will say, hey, you know what? Maybe the religious people didn't check their brains at the door. So I am convinced that there is a God, scientifically. And then you go to, okay, so now that there's a God, are we talking about Allah? Buddha, whatever. It's just the God that I believe would be the God of our Holy Bible. And you say, well, if I'm Jewish, then how does that differentiate our religions? And even by the way, you're in good company if you believe in God. Abraham Lincoln, smart guy, believed in God. Sir Isaac Newton, believed in God. Albert Einstein believed in God. And I was talking with a gentleman one time, and he's like, no, Albert Einstein was a Jew. Yeah, he was Jewish, but he still believed in God. And in fact, everybody used to believe in God, and then the funding went to philosophers. So the scientists tend to go where the funding was, and that's where a lot of the change came. In any event, so now we have a God, and the thing about Christianity is the Old Testament, the Jewish Bible, was the Torah, first 5 books of the Bible, talk about a Messiah will come. He'll be born, it talks about where he'll be born. He'll be stricken with stripes for our iniquities, which sounds like Jesus to me, the whips and how he was crucified. And this is in the book of Isaiah, talking about, this guy will come, he'll enter on a donkey. And, we just believe that he came. That's the only difference. It's not that the religions aren't in contradiction to each other. They are just, one is, okay, the Messiah will come, and Christianity is he came. And, in a moment I will give you the reason why I believe he is who the Jews said he was. Hey guys, we love sugar. Sugar tastes good. Problem is, it's causing obesity, it's linked to type 2 diabetes, so we switch over to artificial sweeteners, which at a certain level become bitter, and now it's linked to early dementia. In fact, if you're drinking diet sodas on a regular basis, you're 10 times more likely, studies say, in getting early dementia. So we have a sugar, it's called Next Sugar. It tastes great. It's as sweet as sugar. It's 100% on the sweetness index. Yes, there is an index for that. And guess what? It's half the calories, guys. You can bake with it, try it, get going, do your thing. Hi, everybody. So we're talking about God, religion, why I believe that I made the best choice with the information I had, and there are a lot of other things. There's just personal experiences, like you feel the effects of your decision, but that's not going to help some people in certain situations. They want hard evidence. And I called a radio station a while back, KBC. This is, I don't know, 15 or so years ago. And there was a guy on there, and he was talking about, it was right before Christmas, and he was talking about Jesus the Myth. He wrote a book. And it was Al Rantel. He was the host of the show, but he had the author on. And so this guy was talking about different things, and I asked him, I go, has he heard of something called the Babylonian Talmud? And that was back in the day. You have basically the times for that era. It's a secular way of recording what's going on. They wanted to know. They wanted to keep some sort of record, and so the government had this stuff written down, and it talked about Jesus. And the crazy thing is, it said this guy named Jesus was ultimately crucified for being a sorcerer, and basically that's the government saying this guy is supernatural things. He's doing supernatural things. And of course they blame, it's from Satan and everything else. But they called Jesus a lot of things, but they never called him a liar. Because every time he did something, not every time, but the times that are recorded in the Bible, there were multiple people there. I mean, in some cases, thousands, 15,000. And you could not... It's one thing to lie, but it's another thing to lie about what you did and people witnessed it, and to tell them to go forth. And so I mentioned this to the gentleman that, hey, here's even the government at the time saying, yeah, there's a guy named Jesus, and he was crucified for doing supernatural things. And then the host of the show actually said, well, yeah, there's a lot of crazy people claiming a lot of crazy things. And I said, the difference, and I remember being on hold, and I'm like, come on, brain, think. And I had read a book by Lee Strobel. He was a reporter that went out to debunk Jesus and wind up becoming a Christian because of the evidence he saw.